Welcome to the Right Fight Podcast. I'm Kenny Vaughn. I'm here with my wife, Tammie.
Hello, everyone.
And we are talking about
how to live a loving life.
How to live a loving life. Every week, that's what we're talking about, but not every week now. Because we did change. I've had a couple people reach out. I thought, probably people won't even notice because people don't normally, some people listen right when the episodes come out, but a lot of them have reminders set and they go listen when they can, they're behind. But last week we did change to every 2 weeks instead of every week, which you'll probably be grateful for because you hear enough of me and you never can hear enough of Tammie, but you can definitely hear enough of me on a weekly basis. But part of it is just because I felt like, and we felt like, we want to bring really meaningful content. And weekly, I think we were getting to a point where it's like, okay, what are we going to talk about this week? And I'd rather bring a little less of more meaningful content. So we're going to try this for a little while. We may go back to weekly, but just so you know, if you're only hearing this every other week, that's why. This week we're talking about conflict resolution. Before we do that, though, I got a little story. It's okay. Mm-hmm. I can tell. I thought it was funny and it was difficult at the same time. But I went to an antique mall 2 weeks ago, a week ago, something like that, and I hadn't told Tammie this story yet. And I'll go in there. What I was looking for like the '80s boom box. I don't know if anybody remembers what those were, but it was like looked like a rectangle box. Had a handle on the top, had a speaker on each side, a cassette player in the middle. I don't know why I wanted one. I think just because I saw one and I thought I'd just like to hear music from one of those again. And when I was growing up, me and my brother shared a bedroom, and that was our stereo. We had the boombox, and it just sat on the nightstand or whatever. And every night we'd listen to Casey Kasem's top 40 at the end of the week or whatever it was, So I was always listening to that, and I thought it just brought back memories. So I thought, I wonder if I can go find one of those in an antique mall. So I go to an antique mall, I walk in, I'm looking for that. If you've ever been to antique malls, I haven't been a lot, but recently I've gone to a few. And the first thing I learned is like, it's not just the items in there that are antiques. I don't know why, but it's usually old people. You know what I mean? It's old people that operate antique malls.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what you were thinking. I wasn't going.
I thought you meant like everybody there.
Well, there's some truth to that too. Like most of the customers.
Really?
I guess I'm getting there. I don't know, but a lot of the customers and the people that are there. So I walk into this one, and there's three ladies that are sitting at a table together, and to me they look like they're old enough to be my grandmother. But I'm not as young as I think I am, or I feel like I am sometimes. But they're sitting there, and as soon as I walk in, they're like, "Hey, how can we help you? What we're looking at?" They're sitting at the table, and one of them's looking at me like she's got that "I know you" look. I never like those because I'm always like, "Whoa, like where do you know me from?"
You always forget.
Yeah, and it could be good or it could be bad. She might. I'm looking at her thinking, I probably was the one she threw out of her classroom 3 or 4 times. You know what I mean? Or maybe she was my neighbor that we were after her house every other week. I don't know, but I'm like, she's kind of smiling. But she's definitely got the "I know you" look. And we chat for a minute. I'll tell them what I'm looking for, and then she says, she kind of lifts her hand and she points and she's like, Bob, you're Bob Jones, right? And I'm like, oh man, thank God. She don't know me. She just thought she knew me. So then I said, no, ma'am, that's not me. She goes, oh, you look just like, I could have sworn you were my classmate. And we went, yeah. And I was like, somebody get her some glasses. There's no way. She just said, like, we went to school together. Unless maybe, then I wasn't thinking about it at the time, unless maybe she was my teacher and I was in kindergarten, But she literally, but no, I don't think that's what she meant. She was like, I was about to get up and come over there and give you a hug. I hadn't seen you in so long. And I'm like, did she really think I was her classmate?
Oh.
You think? I'm not young, but
no.
She definitely could have been my teacher. She had a cane.
Well, no.
And she needed it. I'm not picking on her. God hope she's not listening. But I'm serious.
Well, maybe she just had, maybe, I don't know.
She couldn't see. She needed
Maybe
glasses.
so.
I think she needs. I'm going with that for now. But the bad news is that's like the third time recently I bumped into somebody I bumped into somebody at the hardware store not long ago, and the lady was like, "Were you in the class of whatever?" I don't remember. And I was like, I know you don't think I was in your class. There's no possible way. But I'm 57.
So you don't look 57.
I don't think. I mean, I guess I do.
No,
Maybe
you
I look
don't.
67. I
No,
must
you
look 77 or
don't.
87
No,
for her
you
to think
do
I was in her
not.
class.
You do not.
But that was conflict, but I didn't get to resolve it. I just had to move on without it. And not all conflict is worth resolving. And so I think in talking about conflict resolution, I think that's probably the most important first thing to consider is this conflict worth resolving? Because there are so many things that come up in life that cause conflict, but the end result of attempting to resolve it isn't a truth worth fighting for. So even if we did end up, even if you had true resolution, true resolution is really just, in this area I was wrong and you were right, and in this area you were right and I was wrong. So true resolution is the truth, meaning that we can discuss, have a communication back and forth, whatever it is that we're conflicted about, and identify what the truth actually is, and that we're both willing to surrender to the truth. Meaning, you know what, you were right here and I was right here, and because when we can both do that, the truth is best for both of us. So everybody wins in true resolution. But some truths are just simply not worth fighting for. So because we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about in conflict resolution, we're going to talk about not abandoning the conflict, not walking away from it, expecting it to resolve itself, because I don't believe that we don't believe that brings resolution. That we actually, if we want resolution in the conflict, we have to actually confront it. We have to face it, and it takes two of us being willing to do that. But because we're talking about confronting conflict, I wanted to first just mention there are conflicts that are not worth confronting. There's a lot of things that we just don't disagree on. I mean, we don't agree on, that aren't life-changing, that there's maybe not a real truth, and it may be different for you than it is for me. There are things like that in life. I mean, you might like certain colors. I like other colors, I have, some bad habits, that you don't like. I snore. And there's not a lot I can do about it, but you don't like, we have issues, but thank God, you can take something like snoring, or you can take something like a bad habit, or little things that aren't life-altering, and they can become pet peeves that eventually lead to bitterness, where you actually despise someone, but if you really got down to the nuts and bolts of why you despise them, it's like 3 or 4 little things that they do that may be weird and maybe they shouldn't do, but they really aren't hurting anyone. They just gotten to the point that they really bug you, and it drives you up a wall and you can't handle it anymore. And so there are conflicts, there are truths that aren't worth fighting for. And I think we need to examine those. And so, with that said, I would just say, what's a good way to know, is this truth worth fighting for or not? And I would say, if the disagreement that we have, or the conflict that we have, if this truth that we're differing about, if what you believe about it not being true will actually destroy your life, then that's a truth worth fighting for. Or if I believe it will destroy your life, or if I believe that it was going to really hurt you over the long run, if you continue to believe what you're believing, and because what we're doing is always rooted in something we believe. The point of entering the conflict is to flush out what is it that we believe, and is it true or not? Because what we're doing is normally the result of something we believe. And so if you go on, if I'm deciding, hey, is this a truth worth battling with you, with Tammie, with my wife, then I think my first hurdle I need to clear is that, hey, if Tammie continues to do this, what's it going to do to her life? What's it going to do to her relationships with other people? What's it going to do with her relationships with our children? What's it going to do with her relationship with me? And if it's going to continue, if it's going to harm you and destroy your relationships or hinder your relationship over time, then I think that's a truth worth fighting for. But what I tend to want to do is, this bugs me, but it doesn't bug anybody else. And it's not really something that's actually hurting you. That might be a truth not worth fighting for.
So you're supposed to resolve the conflict for the other person, not for yourself.
Yes, I think so. Now, that doesn't mean, here's the beautiful thing about that, and we've talked about a lot about that throughout all of our podcasts, what love does and why it does it. The wonderful thing is, the problem with me coming to resolve a conflict for myself without regard for you is I come in making it extremely difficult for you. It's a lot harder for you to humble yourself whenever I'm saying, this is what you're doing to me, this is what you're doing. And then I leave you in the position where you almost have to defend yourself. Compared to if I would come into this conflict and say, hey, you know what? This is the problem. This is what's going on. And my concern is, yes, it is hurting me, what we're dealing with. But my concern is the fact that it's not who I am. It's who you are. It's like what's going on in your life. And I want to understand why you're doing it. And see if we can flush out, if you understood the truth, maybe you wouldn't even want to do it anymore. But yes, my responsibility is to resolve the conflict for your sake, not my own. So the good news is, if I do that, if the conflict gets resolved, then it's more likely to get resolved if I'm fighting for you. And hopefully you're also wanting the conflict resolved for my sake. But if the conflict gets resolved, it's best for both of us. So the reason that you're safe, because your first thought is, hey, if I go in here to resolve this conflict for their sake, what about me? Like, the reason I'm here is because it's really bugging me. But hopefully the reason you're approaching them is not because it's bugging you, because you've already asked yourself, is this really bad for them too? Or am I, because if it's just bugging me and no one else, I'm the one who I probably could resolve that conflict within myself. I don't have to involve you. But if what you're doing is wrecking your own life and hurting not just me, but everyone else, then that's a conflict. That's a bone worth picking. And I should come, I think, intending to resolve it for your sake. And if I really do what's best for you, it's also best for me. We talked about this before in the boundaries episode, but love is my boundary, because if it's really not best for you, then it's not best for me or anyone else either. But my responsibility is to love you. And if I love you, then we can resolve the conflict. And I think that's the best way we can come out. Sometimes you have to just go resolve it, and it can work. Where you go in, you're both fighting for each other. It's a bit more bloody and more difficult, and more people. There's more damage done in the process. But if we both come out, in the end, if we both humble ourselves and are willing to look at our own issues, what we can do different, and agree, and then I think we can find some resolution. Does that make sense?
I think so. There's a couple of scriptures that we thought would go along with it. One of them is found in Galatians. It's chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. But watch yourselves, or you also may be tempted. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. I like how it says to restore the person gently, because that's in love.
Right.
That would be in love.
Right. So what I would say, there's two things that really matter if you're gonna enter conflict, is how you're doing it and why you're doing it. So how you're doing it should be gently. It doesn't always start that way. It doesn't have to start that way, but it needs to end that way for sure. But it's a lot easier if it can start gently. And sometimes when you start gently, you still offend the other person, so it gets rough for a little while, and it's still hard. But if you got two people willing to communicate, then you can get to a gentle ending. So it's how you do it does matter, but I think what matters the most is why you're doing it. So as you said a while ago, am I here to resolve this conflict to get what I want and to change who you are so I can keep you but not get the stuff that I don't want about you? Or am I here to resolve this conflict for your sake? And I think our why should be for the other person's sake, that it's truly best for them. I think a conflict kind of like, I think what I tend to do is what I want to do is I always want to ignore the conflict. Or the problem, whatever the issue is, because it's hard to confront it. It's just I think the mistake most people make most often is refusing to confront the conflict. I think most people, if they will just confront the conflict, even if they don't confront it properly, even if they have the wrong why and the wrong how, but if they just have a somewhat fair heart, if they'll just confront it, even if it gets rough at first, if both of these people are somewhat reasonable, then the truth will begin to surface. And we won't look at that truth and say, I don't care what that is, I want what I want. If you get that from someone, that's a little bit of revelation of who you're dealing with. If they'll look right at the truth, you still get some resolution out of this. Unfortunately, the resolution you get is that this person is not reasonable. But there's always some kind of resolution that comes out of conflict because, no matter how hard it may start, because in the process, the truth starts surfacing. The truth always reveals itself. And when it surfaces and it reveals itself, if one or both people will look right at the truth, and either justify their actions or make excuses or do those kind of things, then unfortunately the revelation you have is that, hey, you have somebody here, at least for now, who's totally unwilling to acknowledge the truth. If either party's unwilling to acknowledge the truth, then like resolution and restored relationships, there's no way to get that in a healthy way if one or both parties will look at the truth and ignore it. Our problem is we don't want to lose the relationship. Mm-hmm. And it's too hard to deal with that.
It's hard.
Right. Mm-hmm. So what we'll do is, instead of confronting it, and we're afraid of that because it's unknown. We don't really know what's going to happen when we attempt to resolve this. It may reveal something that we were hoping wasn't true, like that this person, no matter no amount of truth, is going to change their mind. They're going to do what they're going to do, and they're going to justify it.
What happens then? I was thinking about that. Like, what happens then? I think I had a direct message about that one. I think we're talking about that in the next podcast. The next. Yeah. Okay, that's right.
We'll say that one for the next podcast. Someone asked me that exact question. We'll discuss that more later. But I think what happens is, first of all, that's the decision they're making right now. So if you're attempting to resolve this conflict and somebody's looking right at the truth and they refuse to acknowledge it, they got justification or reason, just meaning like, yeah, this is obviously true, but it's not true for me because you don't know what I've been through. Mm-hmm. Or it's not true for me because, yeah, everybody else may tolerate that, but I'm not going to tolerate it. Or it's not true for me, but it's true for everyone else, but for me, that's not who I am. So they'll look right at the truth, refuse to do anything about it. So I think the best you can do at that point, if you can't help them, you can attempt to help them see, hey, do you really think do you really believe that? This seems pretty plainly obvious to me. It's hard for me to understand how you can look at that and think something differently. Can you help me understand why? And if they can't help you understand why, it's because they know that you're right, but they're not going to change because you've hit a nerve or something within them. If that's what you have, then I think you have to walk away at that point from that conversation or whatever was happening. I don't mean leave the relationship necessarily, but you have to exit that, because sometimes when people get confronted, first of all, they think you don't love them anymore because you confronted them, or they think you don't like them anymore, and they think you're not going to ever like them again because you confront them. They have all these false beliefs. Hopefully they're false beliefs. Because that's not your goal, is to not love them or like them anymore. But sometimes they think all those things, and because they believe those kind of things, in the moment, they can't handle it. They can't deal with it. And so they'll just stand their ground because they don't know what else to do. But if you'll walk away from that, but I would say, let them know you still love them. Hey, we're walking away from this. I don't agree with you, and I don't think it's best for you, but it's okay. I still love you. Okay. And I would say we kind of keep going along side by side, and we give them a little time. But within some period of time, hopefully they will return to us and say, I've been thinking about that. We got to give them a chance to do that, I think. I've been thinking about that. And it really wasn't fair what I said and did. And I want to do something different. If that happens, it's just amazing. Mm-hmm. Like here comes conflict resolution. Mm-hmm. And they may not change it overnight. It may take them time to enter into this, and they may change over time. But if you got two people that are willing to do that, or someone that's willing to do that, then that's whenever real change can take place and total healing can come to a relationship. And we won't be perfectly in getting along and everything within our relationship, but that's when the real change can come. Or what's going to happen is you're going to go away from that and say, I love you anyway. And they're going to move on from there as if nothing ever happened. It'll be like that conversation didn't even take place because it was useless, and because they're not going to deal with it. They just want to keep going like it didn't happen so they can forget about it, because they don't want to have to wrestle with the idea of the truth means they need to change. And so they just go on as if nothing ever happened. And they act like, they don't even have any remorse over the dispute. The next day it's like it never even happened. And you're still wrestling with, we got something going on here and this is difficult. And they act like, hey, it's a wonderful day. Mm-hmm. Give you a hug, and like nothing changed. Nothing's really happened here, because they don't want to go back and wrestle with that truth. So that's what I mean. Like I think of it like a soup. If you have a big pot, we make gumbo, make a big pot of gumbo, you can have a bunch of sludge in there. And if you just leave it alone, it'll all settle to the bottom. So when it's stirred up, you can look in there and it's like, whoa, we might need to pour this out and start over. But if you leave it alone, it'll all settle to the bottom. And so, but you got to turn the heat down in order for it to settle. But if you turn the heat down long enough, and I think that's what these people want to do. They don't want to take the sludge out of the pot. They just want to turn the heat back down so it can settle back to the bottom and no one will know it's there. Mm-hmm. And they want to just go on as if everything's fine. Our problem is we don't want to stir it up either, because it's hard and it's looking like they don't want to get the sludge out of the pot, but they need to. Like the sludge is killing them. It's hurting us, but it's destroying them. They definitely need to get that out of their pot. So I think if when we move on in the relationship, if they want to move on and pretend nothing ever happened, and wait and see, sometimes they'll pretend like nothing happened, but their behavior will begin to change. So they didn't really know how to face you over it. They didn't know how to own it. They didn't know how to admit it. But in their hearts, they wanted to do something different because they knew it was true, and their behavior begins to change. Well, I think that's good enough. I don't need to take you back and rub your nose in it and say, see, I was right, or anything else. Hey, if your behavior starts changing, I know deep down, I'm like, wow, you acted like you didn't hear it, and you acted like you didn't believe it, but you obviously heard it and you obviously believed it because you're beginning to behave differently. But if they go on and their behavior has no change whatsoever and they act like nothing ever happened, what they're doing is they want the heat turned down on the pot so all the sludge can settle to the bottom again. But the heat's going to get turned back up. Right. And if you just leave it there, it's never going to go anywhere. Something is going to turn the heat up on the pot, even if I don't turn it up. My argument is, if I love you, we have that contention. We attempt to resolve the conflict. We walk away. You want to leave all the sludge in the pot, and you just want the heat turned down so everything will settle out and it'll look great for the next 6 months or 6 years. My argument is, if I love you and I know the sludge is in there, my responsibility is to start turning the heat back up. I have a responsibility, maybe not immediately, but a week or two goes by and we've like returned to everything's normal, but it's really not, and we both know it, but you're going to pretend like it is, then I have a responsibility to turn the heat back up a little bit, just meaning, We really never resolve that. I still don't understand. But that's hard to do because it's going to cause another argument. It's going to cause more conflict. And I want to avoid that. And if I want to avoid conflict, if I want to avoid confrontation, I'm never going to resolve conflict. It takes confrontation in order to resolve our conflicts. It's difficult, but it's not nearly as difficult if you're willing to do it for the other person's sake. Because when I come in to do it for my sake, I leave with selfishness and shame. Like I know that what I did, there's God created me with a knowing within my own heart that what I'm doing is not right. And so not only do I have the conflict problem, I have to leave and carry some shame with me as I go. But if I come in to resolve the conflict for your sake, and I'm willing to trust God in the truth, even if it means I also need to change, then even if it's difficult, I can leave that conflict with peace. Mm-hmm. Like I can keep going knowing, we didn't resolve anything, but I did the best I could, and I did it for I really did it, as purely as I know how to do it. It may not be perfectly pure, but as purely as I know how to do it. So I actually loved them even though they didn't like it. And then if that's the case, I think, and you're still struggling to get resolution, I think you have to stay the course. Meaning that every little while you got to turn the heat back up. Assuming then we need to make sure we understand that, hey, the sludge is in the bottom of your pot and you don't want to deal with it. We both know it's there, but you don't want to deal with it. You just want to let it sit until it boils up later. But I think our responsibility then becomes to keep turning the heat back up, meaning we don't pretend everything's resolved and that everything's clean inside this pot when we know the bottom half of it's sludge. And every time any heat comes along, the first thing we see is the sludge coming up. Mm-hmm. And if you don't not sure if it's gone or not, that the other thing when you turn the heat up, you figure it out. So if you turn the heat up again later, we may think, well, I think this is resolved. They're behaving a little differently. I think they dealt with it. Well, turn the heat back up a little bit. And as soon as you don't have to turn it on high, you can just turn it up a little bit. And as soon as the first roll comes up, if it's a bunch of sludge, meaning a bunch of them lashing out, shifting the blame on you, offended, highly offended again, all that stuff, then nothing's resolved. But if you turn it up a little bit and they're like, and that's not what you get, when the first roll of oil comes up in the pot, it's clean. It's like, wow. They kind of resolved it on their own, and they didn't do exactly like I thought they should have, or the way I wish they would have, but it's resolved, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, I also think that when it's resolved, that it's a stronger relationship. Like it just makes your relationship stronger. That's just what I've come to see. Like even like with us, like any little spats we would have when we resolve them. I just feel like it's strengthened our bond. So,
100%. We avoid the confrontation. It's the confrontation and the conflict. Once resolved, it does grow our relationship stronger with someone. Because when two people come together in confrontation for the right reasons to resolve this conflict, not just to pick a fight or to be mean or rude or any of that stuff, but do we do all that comes up within the confrontation, we're going to see some of that. Just know you're going to see some of that. But if the primary goal is two people attempting to resolve the conflict and they work through a hard spot to get that done, yes, when they come out of that, love grows stronger in that relationship. So it's really, we're avoiding the thing that is, I would say, is most responsible for love growing stronger in our relationship. Because we're afraid it's going to tear our relationship apart. And we're unwilling to face it. But when we're unwilling to face it, we tear our relationship apart, thinking that we're saving it.
Yeah.
That makes sense? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think so.
Well, I think that's all I got, unless you got something.
I think so.
Okay. Well, close with a prayer.
Sure.
Father, we pray you give us soft hearts and not hard ones. And that we remind ourselves that hard hearts are weak and that soft hearts are strong. And we pray that, Lord, you help us to attempt to resolve our conflict not for our own sake, but for the sake of the person that we love, and that they would do the same. And that we know you, God, you are love. And that if we can get you in the middle of our conflict, that you can resolve it. And soften our hearts, Lord, that we're ready and willing and excited to become who you have called us to be and to grow stronger in love. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Till next time, trust God's word no matter what.
And keep your eyes on the horizon.